If we look at this first one, it's 4 over 5x plus 5, 3 over 2x plus 2. Right now, there's nothing in common. So I would have to multiply the right-hand side by 5x plus 5 and the left-hand side by 2x plus 2. Correct? This is where it gets a little harder because sometimes you can do something so that maybe they do look the same. Do you notice anything about them? The denominators? Up until now, it's been like x plus 5 or x minus 3. They have GCFs. So we can take a GCF out of them. If you can GCF the denominators, the difference of squares, the denominators, often you can make them similar. Okay? So we have 4. Remember, your test is on Thursday, and then your cumulative will be the following Wednesday. Okay? On the first 4 units. So this one here, I can take a 5 out, and I'm left with x plus 1. This one, I can take a 2 out, and I'm left with x plus 1. Do you see why it's helpful to take that number out? Now they both actually have an x plus 1 in common, so we don't have to multiply by x plus 1 at all, right? Now the left one is a 5, and the right one has a 2. So what could we make them both be? 10 x plus 1, correct? So I'm going to multiply this one by 2 and 2. And I'm going to multiply this one by 5 and 5. Because they just have coefficients of numbers. So on the top, I'm going to get 8. And on the bottom, I'm going to get 10x plus 1. Do I put my denominators together? Do I distribute them back in? No. The only time you do that is when they're a monomial, when there's no plus or minus signs, right? Because it's of no help to put them back in. You're not simplifying at all. Plus 15 over 10x plus 1. So I'm going to get 23 over 10 x plus 1. X cannot equal negative 1. Now that would have been a way harder question had I multiplied the left-hand side by 2x plus 2 and the right-hand side by 5x plus 5, right? I would have had a whole bunch of distributing, then I would have to collect like terms, and then I would have had to cancel off common stuff to get it to reduce to what it is now. Okay? Totally different ballgame. The one beside it, so J here, is there anything I could do? Take an x out of the right-hand side denominator. So the left-hand side, there's nothing I can do. It's just 1 over x. Can't make it any more simple. This one, I could take an x out, and I'm left with x plus 2. Now what could I do? The right-hand side has x and x plus 2 in the denominator. The left-hand side has an x. What does it need? Times by x plus 2. My MPVs are 0 and negative 2. So when you go to do adding and subtracting, you always have to check if you can actually GCF or difference of squares your denominators to make your common denominators possibly easier. Okay? You have to remember that. You have to remember, can I take something out? Or can I do a difference of squares? Perhaps that would make this easier. If one of them is an x squared, you for sure can, because they're not going to do that to you. Okay? We'll look at k, and then we'll be done here. Now, we have talked about this before. The left-hand side is x minus 1. If I write the right-hand side in the same order, right-hand denominator, with x then what, then the number, I have negative x plus 1. They're the exact same variable and number, but exactly the wrong signs, correct? The left-hand denominator is a positive x and a negative 1. The right-hand denominator has a negative x and a positive 1. What did I tell you to do when they have the exact same variable and number, but the exact wrong signs? Take out a negative 1, or multiply by a negative 1. You're correct. So I'm going to take a negative 1 out of here, because personally, I like having a positive x. Just myself. So I'm going to get 2 over x minus 1 over negative 1 x minus 1. Now what's awesome about the negative sign, and only the negative sign, the rest you have to kind of multiply to get common denominators. But what about negative signs is true? Well, back in the day, when you first started with a negative sign, if you had negative 3 over 4, could you write that as negative 3 over 4? Is that the same thing? Yeah. It's also the same as 3 over negative 4. They just told you that one of them had to be negative, correct? And what is that negative? Well, that negative is literally just a negative 1. Negative 3 is the same as saying negative 1 times negative, or times positive 3, correct? Do we agree? So that's why this negative can move down in front of here, because it's just a negative being multiplied. We agree? Why does this have anything to do with this? Well, if you just take out a negative 1, instead of multiplying the left-hand side by negative 1, you could just move the negative sign to the numerator. So you could go move the negative 1 up here instead and multiply it. But what's the catch then? Right now, it only has one term in the numerator of the right-hand side, so you just multiply it out. But what if there was a binomial? What would you have to make sure to do? Distribute the negative 1 into all the terms. Okay? So if this instead was negative 1 on the numerator times x plus 3, if I had moved it up to the numerator, say it was like this. Say I moved this up here and got rid of it down here. I would have to make sure that I put it into both terms. Does that make sense? I don't have that problem here because I only have one term. But if I had two, I would have to make sure that I put it into the whole thing. So it's up to you how you deal with it. You could just say, hey, I don't want to move it up here. I'm just going to multiply this side by negative 1, and then they're the same, which is absolutely fine. Okay? All right. So I moved it up. So now I have 2 over x minus 1 minus negative 1 over x minus 1, which is 2 plus 1 over x minus 1, which equals 3 over x minus 1. X cannot equal 1. Make sense? If you don't like moving the negative 1 up, no big deal. Multiply the bottom left and or the left-hand side numerator and denominator by negative 1. Get you same common denominator. Okay? I'm going to give you 3 questions to work on, and we're going to go through them, and then we're moving on to solving. Here's my textbook. So you're going to work on these 3 questions, then we're going to go through the answers of them. I've lost my 30-2 textbook somewhere in... Oh, there it is. So many books. So it's in the exact same place where you were doing your last homework. So you do those 3, and then we're going to go through those answers. And then we're moving on to solving.